and creating, writing, and stuff like that. And I know that I look at things that other people take a look at and be like, "This is great," and I'm like, "Nah, that's trash." I need to. Is that because? Is that what it's from?
Um, Probably. I definitely think that like you are always going to see your flaws so much more intensely. Like this is kind of a weird analogy, but like I really one thing that I find to be incredibly relaxing is like picking at my pores, and sometimes I'll just like look at them and I'm like, "Oh my God, they're so big." Like they're basically mini Grand Canyons, and I'll be looking at them and then I'm like, "Okay, but you are literally pressing your nose up against a mirror." Like the only reason they look so big to you is because you are highly scrutinizing them, and people at a distance, no one is ever going to think their pores are huge. And guess what? They're not. So it's just like it's this weird like I don't know, like twist that we kind of put ourselves in. We just push ourselves up way too close to the mirror sometimes.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, you said it's relaxing, because that's kind of
Oh
weird,
my
like,
God, yes.
because you're just sitting there like looking at all your pores and stuff, and like, oh my
Yeah.
goodness, my pores are so huge. Look at them. I
Yeah.
mean, do you mean like how do you pick at a pore? Like, I'm kind of curious. Your fingers are like too big for. I mean, you'd have to
You
have
don't
like
get
whole
like
size pores.
you don't get like no 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 like you don't have like if you squeeze your nose sometimes just like a little bit of oil comes out. Like that kind of stuff.
What? That's crazy. I've never
Oh
done
my
that.
God.
I've never paid attention. Maybe I'm gonna have
What?
to now.
Oh my
Stop
God.
it. Listen,
That's
you're
like
making me pick up a new hobby that I never wanted to pick up. Now you're gonna have me like going home, like, hey mom, like I'm like in the mirror, like trying to pick at my pores and move
oh
my
my God.
nose around and
There is an entire YouTube community dedicated to like pores and pimples and all this stuff. I personally can't watch any of the mega zit shit. Like, I can't. That really grosses me out. But if I'm doing it to myself or my partner, I'm all about it.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. Well, it's funny that you brought that up.
It makes me nauseous when I look at the pores in YouTube. Those massive zits. Ugh, I just can't.
I'm saying it's
if it's
cool
on
that you bring it up.
Nose, I'm gonna get it.
Because that's you're the second person we've had on as a guest that's brought that up. So I'm starting to think this is a weird fascination with zits.
It is.
That everyone has.
Are you kidding me? Yeah.
It's a lot of people's guilty pleasure out there. There's a movement going on.
Yeah.
It pops up on Facebook all the time.
Yeah,
pops. Literally, it pops. You see it pops.
Coach, you picking your pores and stuff later on tonight, trying to see if the oil comes out.
No, it's not my vibe. I just stumbled across one of the rabbit hole one day.
Oh man, how's it going, guys? Dev here, Coach B. You know who it be, and we have our special guest today, Adrien Behn. And Adrien, go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us a little about yourself and what you're up to, and go from there.
Yeah, hi. I'm calling from the Hudson Valley in upstate New York, and where I'm currently quarantined, surrounded by lots of sheep. And I saw a turkey today, so I was that on my walk, and I was that's pretty cool. I will see you at Thanksgiving. And I am a storyteller. I write, I do podcasting, and then I also do live performances. And most of my topics are based around travel, but not all of them. But my podcast and writings are mainly revolve around traveling because I am a solo female traveler.
Oh, and what is the name of the podcast?
Called Strangers Abroad. And that's really how I got into the storytelling community. Was when I was 25, I had a quarter life crisis, like a cliche millennial. And I booked a one-way ticket to Mexico City. And as my goal was to get to Peru, and I gave myself about 5 months to get there. And I hit every single country on the way. And as I was doing it, I was I can't just be traveling. That wasn't good enough for me. And I had done travels before, and I really wanted to document my travels in a way that felt very appropriate for me. And I was obsessed with podcasts at the time. And I just remember sitting on this carpet that I hated in this apartment that I hated in Portland, Oregon, which is where I was living at the time. And I bought my ticket to Mexico City. I was great, I'm getting out of here. I don't want to be here anymore. I bought my ticket to Mexico City, and I was still dicking around on my iPad, and I saw the little GarageBand symbol, which is one that I had always ignored. I was oh, this is a waste of space for me. But I clicked on it, and I recorded, and I was well, maybe I can make a podcast, which makes any NPR producer cringe. But I appreciate Apple's low barrier to entry when it comes to creating podcasts. So I was all right, maybe I'll record everything, all of these awesome conversations that I know that I'm going to have, because when you go out and travel, you just meet so many weird and wonderful people whose stories never get told. And I really wanted to help create a platform to have them share their stories. Because I think that we think that the celebrities and the mega scientists and the politicians are the ones who have stories worth passing on and telling. But I completely disagree. I think that all of us have stories within us. We just happen to be very numb to them, or we don't really know how to articulate that.
Yeah, I mean, because I know a lot of people, and we had a special guest on who talked about this too, Daniel Levin. Some of the people that are right around you right now have the best stories you could possibly hear. Whether it's not just life advice, but also funny, entertaining stories. Just the ones I heard on the first episode of your podcast that talks about identity and on strangers and travel. Those stories even were engaging, just these people talking about how they were from America or they were living in America, or they were a different nationality than American, but they're living in the country, or they go out of the country, and then people don't know who they are and what they are. That's the big thing, is what are you? Are you a Puerto Rican? Or are you are you a Mexican? Are you Indian? What are you? When you go somewhere else. And I think that was very interesting point that you brought. So a lot of those stories were very engaging. But this is something I want to talk to you about, because you said you were down South America, right?
Mhm.
So anyway, this shit is crazy to me. So when I was in 7th, 8th grade,
Uh-huh.
I had seen like a video where in Spanish class there was always videos about like every individual Spanish speaking country in South America to Mexico, you know, like in Central America. And they talked about which one was it? Was it Honduras? Venezuela. Both of them.
Okay.
They put in both of those
Slightly
videos.
far away from each other, but yeah.
What's that?
You went through every single nothing. I was like, they're not close to each other, but yeah.
Right, they're not close to each other, right? But I'm saying in those particular videos, they made it a point because they talk about the cultures. Like every video is like an hour long, and it talks about the culture of that area and what they do and etc. And the funny thing I thought was interesting, and you brought it up in your first episode, was the cat calling and the sexual harassment and stuff down there that people that it's a norm. Now this video, granted, was probably made in like 1997, you know, when I watched
Right.
it, but it was literally a norm for people in that time to do that, and still is to this day, as I believe, to do that, where they just like say, hey baby, how's it going, you know, and smack a girl's ass or whatever down there, from what I understand. And I'm kind of curious, like, your experience with that.
Oh wow. Do we have like 4 hours for this? I my feelings on so in the identity episode, I touch, but I don't really go into my experiences as being a solo woman abroad, because when I'm in America, I'm like, I'm just a human. And I live in New York, it's so diverse. And
Melting
so
pot. Yeah.
and I feel as though like in New York, your identity, people are like, as long as you're not in their way, people don't give a shit about you. It's like, I don't care what you look like, just don't get in my way. And I love that. I love New York for that. But when I leave, I'm very quickly reminded that like I'm a woman, I'm a white woman, I am a blonde woman, and there's a lot of stories that are associated with all of those different identities, and the world responds accordingly. And so there are some places where I feel like as a woman, it's still like whatever, and then there are definitely times where it's like, oh, I can't get away from this. And Latin America was really interesting because like machismo culture, oh my God, there's so much. I was catcalled very consistently throughout Latin America, but no one ever touched me, which I thought was really interesting because I had been touched in other places that I wasn't anticipating. So I think a lot of that might have been because I am a white woman, and whereas they might have treated a woman maybe from America, but if she looked Latino, they might have been a little bit more like, I can't speak to that. Whereas in countries where I look more like the locals, that's where people get a little men tend to get a little bit more handsy. So typically
Wow, that's interesting.
So typically when it comes to
they're comfortable. They think it's if you
they
look
think
like
that
them.
well, people are like, if you think about, how do I want to say this? Like, if you think about, as a woman, statistically, I am not going to be taken and assaulted by a stranger. Statistically, I am more likely to be assaulted by someone that I know.
Right.
And so it is like this kind of weird familiarity where it's like you don't fuck with outside groups, but it's okay to fuck with your own people.
Which is
So that's kind of what I found. Because again, like in Turkey, I was harassed a lot, but again, no one touched me. But in places where I looked more like the locals, handsy. More than handsy, but we don't need to go into those right now.
Yeah, I mean, that'd be some crazy stories.
It's a valid point, because it was a point that I was going to ask you, like going out and traveling.
Hey,
obviously,
Coach, your microphone, you knocked your webcam down a little bit. There you go. You're back.
Obviously, you're from New York, so that gives you a lot of experience on different cultures and stuff like that, and being comfortable with going out. I don't know what's wrong with this thing. Going out into so you going out abroad and going to see other countries and their cultures. So that's kind of what I'm thinking at. Like I tell Dev, like if we went to New York City, don't look up. You know what I mean? Because everybody's going to know you're going to be a target. So when you go out to these different cultures and see, does it take you long, or do you do some studying before, some research? Because that's something I always do when I go somewhere new. I always research. Do you
Yeah.
do something like that to make sure that you recognize and prepare
No,
to add to the
absolutely.
New York shit?
Well, it's not only for like a safety thing, but it's so imperative to walk in. It's almost like doing your research is like bringing a bottle of wine to a dinner party. It's like I'm not in my home. I'm so gracious and happy to be here, and I want to have a really great time. So I'm going to try to make myself as welcoming as possible, and hospitable as possible because I don't know the rules of this house. Does this house are we allowed to like shoes on, shoes off? Like how do you organize your dishes in your cabinets? Like we don't know what the rules are. So it's good to try to make yourself as like hospitable and friendly as possible. And so what I do is I research cultural norms. So like in Turkey, this is like the biggest insult that you could do. It's the equivalent of the middle finger. So it's like, all right, I need to know
Wait, what
that.
did
So
you
I
just
don't say
do?
like this.
This?
If for us, it's the okay sign.
Huh?
But in Turkey and bits and pieces of the Middle East,
my
Oh,
maybe
if
God.
more
it's
because I
this way,
haven't
it's the
done.
game.
Sure,
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying. Is that like you need to know how to hold your hands in your body based on the culture. Because in Albania, I had the hardest time ordering a euro because this is no and this is yes. And so they'd be like, "Do you want like extra sauce?" And I'd be like, "Oh, yes, I do." And they're like,
They,
"Oh, no, she
oh,
doesn't."
no,
And I'm like,
no.
"No, no, no." And I was like, "No, no, 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 I want it." And they're like, "She does want it." And it was the most like confused. I was like, "I just want ketchup. Like that's all I want." So I think
That's
it's
funny.
so important to go in and research like what are customs that you're not going that your body is going to not naturally respond to. And then I also always try to learn bits and pieces of the language as much as I can. Asian languages are so hard for me. And like I learned that when I went last year, that like, and it was a very humbling experience because I was like, it took me 3 weeks to learn how to say hello in Vietnamese, and I still butchered it. But I always try to go in knowing like what are the local customs and what are the ways that I can make myself seem as friendly as possible, because I do stand out in a lot of places.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say, I'm gonna ask you the question about the weirdest custom that you've ever had to like kind of indulge because of the area you were in, because yeah, well, and also like things that you recognize in other countries too, because something I realized like this is just within America, but one night I was on a PlayStation playing a game with a friend of mine, and we're playing a game, and this new guy comes in, I never met him before, and we're playing a game, and then he says, "Oh yeah," he's like, "Hold on, I'm gonna go eat my gob." And I'm like, "Your gob?" And I was like, "Hey, are you from Pennsylvania?" And he said, "Yeah." "How did you know?" And then I realized because only in the state of Pennsylvania do we call it's like a what is like a brownie cake with like the with a whipped peanut butter or whipped cream icing in the middle. They call it a whoopie pie everywhere else, but in PA
Oh,
they call it a gob. So as soon as he said that, I knew exactly what state he was from. Or he at least
yeah,
lived here before. And he was like,
yeah,
"Yeah, I live in PA." And I was like, "Wow, crazy! Like small world." The guy literally lived in PA. And the only way I knew that he lived there was because he said gob.
yeah.
So like I'm kind of curious. Like, have you ever had like a moment like that? And then also too, I kind of want to know the weirdest custom. So those are two different questions. Answer them separately, but
Totally, totally, totally. First of all, I want to say that weird is an incredibly subjective
right,
word. And
weird
I
to our
found my
culture.
right. I don't like using the word weird because it's not weird. Like if you take how do I even want to like begin to I found myself saying, "Oh my God, that when I did Thailand, Vietnam and Singapore last winter." And I kept finding myself saying like that's so weird. And I was like, "Stop. That's like super insulting to them because that's normal to them. I'm the weirdo?"
Yeah.
And so weird is totally based on where you are and who you are and like what you were raised with. But like it's not weird because every individual is its own like true expression of the universe. Like each one of us needs to exist in order to make up the whole world and every perspective. Like my perspective isn't the only one. It isn't truth with like a capital T. So
Right.
their experiences are just as valid as mine, and the way that they live is just as valid as mine. But I will say, like, the ones that surprised me the most, I mean, definitely the Albania head shaking. I think that, and I think that this is a hard territory because it's like I don't want to come off as being like offensive.
Right. I don't know if it would be offensive. I mean, it would be like I think you're right. The word surprising might be better because it's like the
Yeah.
thing where like it's such a culture shock because you're so used to seeing
a culture shock.
Yeah, you're so used to
Yeah.
seeing this and it's
Yeah.
this and it's not that is necessarily wrong. It's just that it's alien, it's foreign to you, right? And that's what I'm saying. Like what's like the most it's like the most foreign custom, and I mean that like it's the most different from yours, like from ours, America, right?
Yeah. I think one thing that so I was really fortunate to travel throughout Vietnam and Singapore with my like, I call her my travel wife. She's just like, she's the only person that I've really, really loved traveling with. She's one of my closest friends. And her parents are from Hong Kong, and she was raised in a Chinese community in Queens, and she was living in Singapore at the time, and we explored Vietnam together, and I was able to see her in such a different light because, we're from New York and we have a very like multiracial friend group, and it wasn't ever whatever, but it was really beautiful to kind of see, how do I want to say this? Like
In her culture, in her element,
in her continent, because she's not Vietnamese, but it was really interesting because the people when we were together, I did not exist. They like only went to her, and they're like, you are the authority here. And I was like, she needs this time. And so one thing that we were talking about over dinner once was that and I might be making a sweeping assumption, so I just want to be like hesitant about that. But she says that in a lot of Asian cultures, instead of saying hello, they say, have you eaten? That's their intro. And it's like, well, have you had your rice? It's kind of like what they ask. Have you had your rice? And it's not like, I think what was really interesting was learning that from my minuscule conversations with my friends, so this is still a sweeping statement, their love languages are so different. Like the way that they show that they care for you was so different, because us, it's like, hi, how are you? And in America, and it's also one thing that I will also say is like, I picked up on a lot of different stereotypes that Americans are given when I was living in Prague in the fall, and a lot of at least Europeans and possibly Asians find Americans to be very disingenuous, because when we ask, how are you? We don't really care. It's just a formality, whereas when you're asked, have you eaten? That's a concern of like, are you nourished? Are you healthy? Are you taking care of yourself? And like, and apparently the way that you respond is like, it is, you say like, yes, I have eaten, and it's like, okay, good, she's all right. Or if you say, no, I haven't eaten, I am eating soon, meaning that like I'm on my way, I'm still taking care of myself, and I'm well fed. And I think that that's interesting.
I was thinking like someone was gonna say, like, you say, oh, I haven't eaten, and they just like grab you and take you to the local restaurant and like, you have to eat right now. Like that's just how they greet each other.
No, it's like a phone call conversation. It's like a phone call.
Okay.
They have nothing, it's not like they can reach through and like make rice for you.
But that is interesting. I mean, they greet each other by asking something, which is essentially saying, "Are you nourished?" And I see what you mean there, because you're right. In America, like, we say like, "Oh, how are you?" And really, you're right. It's a formality. Like we say it, but a lot of people don't genuinely mean it. I mean, I consider myself one of the people that mean it when I ask someone, "How are you?" Because I just think what the reason why it's more of a formality, in my opinion, is because people just usually give you like a bullshit answer of good.
Yeah.
Right? Like they don't really tell you how they are.
Because it's a formality. Because we know that you don't actually, we've kind of like weirdly conditioned ourselves to not actually tell you, because we don't it would be weird. I think I kind of started this conversation. You guys like asked me how I was, and I was like, I'm gonna fucking tell you how I feel. Like I'm an ENFP. I'm gonna tell you how I feel, and if I'm feeling off, you're gonna know. But a lot of Americans, I don't think are like that. We just kind of do that. I'm fine. Because if you did know, that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah, it's just I think
Let's
a lot
get into some
of use
deep
it as
shit.
a conversation starter. That's pretty much all it is a conversation. Like I don't want to jump into, hey, how you doing? And then hopefully that person is saying something that ain't bad, and then yeah, I just went over there, good.
And that's right.
Just a conversation, yeah, formality, and
But I think for people who are learning English and like English isn't their first language, for them to learn like, hey, how are you? They're expecting a genuine answer.
I don't know. That sounds weird because you're saying if it was on the phone, it's disingenuous. If they're asking me, have you eaten? To me, that would be disingenuous because what if I was like, no, I didn't, I'm hungry.
Right?
You know what I mean? How would they, that to me would, I get what you're saying. Like they're saying like you're nutrition. If that was, to me, that would be like somebody coming into somebody's home. My aunt used to be like that though. If you came in her house, she would ask, did you eat today? Something like that. And she really meant, if you didn't eat, she's going to pull something out and start making, and you're going to eat something. So
Right.
I guess that's kind of, I could see that being disingenuous because I know I've seen it for my eyes for a lot of years of my life, is that she meant it.
I guess I just want to clarify, like when you're having a phone conversation,
Uh-huh.
the way that they, like we answer, hello, how are you?
Yeah.
They answer, have you had your rice? So it's not like a come into my home. Have you? And it might be, like I didn't have that experience of like, no, I haven't eaten. So like having them like whip out a beautiful bowl of pho, like I haven't had that. But my friend was saying that from phone conversations, that's how they introduce themselves.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what can we say? What's the most exciting place you've been that you've been there and you were like, I want to stay here, but I gotta go, or you want to go back or whatever?
Yeah. There are there are two places that really, I can only say this in like the most, how do I want to say this? I can only say this in like the most white woman way, which is like these places make my chakras feel very aligned. But I love
crystals.
Yeah, pull out the latte and the UGG boots while you're at it.
Like, let me just take a sip of my matcha latte for a second. Almond milk. So the two places that I'm like, I can't leave you for me are Prague and Mexico City. Now you may think that these are wildly different places, but the reasons I'm captivated by them are very similar. Like they're both huge art cities and they color and decorate their buildings and like they're like, let's make it pink because we freaking can. They're like, I don't care. And the color palettes are just so, like, Prague is like walking through a Monet piece. Like it's just these beautiful pastels.
Real quick, for those
over and over and over again. Prague is in the Czech Republic. Prague is the capital
Thank
of.
you.
Well, now they just changed the name. It's like Cheskia or something. And I was like, okay, that's great.
It's like you knew that I was gonna say, for all those uncultured swine out there that don't know where Prague is, you literally knew what I was gonna say. You're like, it's in the Czech Republic.
It's in the Czech Republic. But I think it's called Cheskia now. So but that one's still gonna. We're all quarantined and in time of Corona, so I think that one's gonna take a minute because they just changed it like last year. So Prague is in Eastern Europe. It's technically the capital of Central Europe, and it's a beautiful space. So both Prague and Mexico City are so colorful, and they're both very green spaces. Now Prague, not so much. They've really cobblestoned everything over, but they do have a really beautiful river that you can walk by and through, and they do have like a nice sprinkling of parks. Whereas Mexico City is a town that has never met a pair of pruners. Like people just let shit grow. And my parents are horticulturists.
Oh, really?
So I grew up in a fucking garden, and literally my parents told me that I was conceived in the nursery, and I was like, Karen, that's like way too much info.
Too
But
much info, ma.
ma,
Ma, you can't be telling me that.
so I love being in cities that are so like lush and colorful, and then both of them have really incredible art and literature scenes. Um, and they're both very like like melancholy places. Like they're both
Like
really,
sad?
but in very, yeah, but not depressed, but just like in Prague, it's very like there's a beautiful heaviness to it because you can still like the Czech Republic is a country that has just always been tossed around and split apart and never really been their own. So a lot of them are very like suspect to any foreigners because they're like, are you going to take our shit too? Like
Mm.
you're gonna first it was the Germans and then it was the Russians. Um, so they side-eyed the Americans and they're like, please don't. Like, um, and
Hmm.
Mexico City is also kind of sad, but in this like there's a strange resilience to them where they're like there's this fighter spirit, but like they fight kind of because they're sad, and there's just this whole slew of music that is dedicated to just singing about how sad they are. But it's so passionate that you
Mm.
can't really hear it. It's so
It's Post
fascinating.
Malone music.
It's just Post Malone.
Yeah.
It's
So
people passionately singing about how they're sad. Yeah.
actually saying about how they said, yeah, that's Mexico City to a T. So they both have like they're both art garden spaces that have really great coffee. I can't say that Czech food is great. I'm
Yeah.
sorry,
Well,
guys.
I mean,
It's
isn't like
just
the coffee comes from South America, does it not?
coffee comes from Africa, but it blossoms in
Oh,
South America. Whereas
really? The Andes? The coca plant?
chocolate comes from Latin America.
Okay, maybe
First,
I am confused.
Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's wild.
But coffee and chocolate, best friends.
Yeah.
So good.
Well, because this is an interesting thing too. I had a friend, and I don't know if it's still her dream or what it is. I haven't talked to her in a long time, but she was talking to me when she was in college about her dream was to save Mexico City
What?
because because
From
Mexico.
what?
Well, Mexico. From what I understand is she wanted to be a civil engineer, and
Uh-huh.
Mexico City is
Oh,
sinking.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
sinking because it's built in the middle of the lake, and
Yeah.
it's over the old ruins of Tenochtitlan. Is that correct?
Oh, girl, there's so much there. So
So
Mexico City
I
is
just opened
like
up a whole
old
can of worms.
school. Yeah. Mexico City is like Venice, where it used to be. It was a giant lake, and there were all of these canals kind of like weaving through it, and that's how they navigated. And the south of Mexico City, one of the last districts to become the city, begins with an X. I can never pronounce it. That's like you go to like the floating gardens when you go to Mexico City, and that's one of the last traces of it. But yeah, the conquistadors drained the lake because they're very culturally sensitive, and the whole city is like built on mud and soot, so it's kind of like sinking. And they just had an earthquake in
Mm.
2018, and everyone was like, what the fuck are we gonna do? So like part of me really wants real estate in Mexico City, but I don't want to like throw it into quicksand. You know, I don't want to just like throw a bag of money into quicksand. So um it's really funny that your friend mentioned that.
Hmm. Well,
Yeah,
she like loved it. From what I understand down
it's
there, she had
so
family.
beautiful.
She may have had family, or she's been there once or twice. I think she worked with the Corps of Engineers, or the.
Cool.
No, not the Corps. Who is it? The people. They're like a group of people that go out. Like you basically volunteer to go like the corps, something corps.
Peace Corps.
AmeriCorps? Peace Corps.
Peace Corps, yeah, the Peace Corps, that's it. And you go and you basically volunteer to go help in these other
Yeah,
Yeah.
countries,
the
and you're
cause.
basically not really. I don't think you're getting paid, right? It's straight up like you just get a house and food, and you're
You
helping.
get, yeah, you get. I did AmeriCorps, so I can only really speak to that, but which is like American based, and I think in the Peace Corps you get a little bit of money. You get enough money to be
Like,
on the poverty. You voluntarily are on the poverty line. So you have enough to get by. You have enough to get groceries and transportation and all that jazz. But like you're not going out drinking every night.
Okay.
yeah.
Well,
Look at Coach's face. Coach is like, yeah, I don't know. He's like, I think I wouldn't do it. I can't go drinking.
You got to throw a budget
Forget
for
it.
that in there somewhere, Peace Corps. Come on, American Corps. Come on.
Yeah.
We're doing good work out here.
At least 2 days. What? Just the weekend? Come on. Not every day, but the weekend? You can't do the weekend for me?
Not in there somewhere.
But no, yeah, but that was the whole story with her, and I thought it was interesting to get because you seem like someone who's like her. She was so passionate about that place that I kind of wanted your opinion to say, how do you feel about Mexico City, and then the idea that it might be sinking to the bottom of a lake? Because I thought that was interesting too. When she told me that, I was like, what are you talking about? That it's the bottom of a lake?
Well, it's not on water anymore, but it's just on mud. Like it's not built. Like New York is built on rock. Like that shit is stable. Whereas Mexico City, it's like yeah,
It's like
all on mud.
it's a very alluvial soil. Kyle Miller in the chat says, "Wait, Dev, you have friends?" Thanks, Kyle. I appreciate that. That's a nice jab at me.
So is it something like Dubai, like how they built it? Can't they do something like that in Dubai? How they made that city? Can't they, finagle some stuff around Mexico City to help it?
I have no idea.
Listen,
I am not an engineer.
Apparently, we have to get Peyton on the show because she studied this shit. And I gotta get her on the show to be like, come talk. We'll invite Adrien back, and she'll be like, okay, tell us how we're gonna do it. And she's like, what?
Give me the deets.
Like, tell me how we're gonna save Mexico City. Because I'm trying to get she's like, because I'm trying to get a house down there, and I can't throw a bag of money into quicksand. And she's gonna be like, oh, okay, now I understand it. So, awesome. I had one more question, and I can't think of it off the top of my head. It had something to do with your travels, but I can't think of what it is. It's something you brought up. Oh man, it's gonna drive me crazy. Go ahead and keep talking about Mexico City or what have you. But I have to think about this for a second. What was it? Never mind. Forget it. It's gone. It's gone.
Just don't think about it. Ask me a different question, and then while I'm answering, you can interrupt me at the most inopportune moment when you think of it.
Okay, awesome.
This is a question I have. What makes a person travel? Because that means you don't, like, if you travel a lot, there's two ways I look at that thing. You travel a lot, it could mean two things. I'm not saying either one is you. I'm just asking. That's just my opinion, though. Is it because you can't stay in one place, you can't put roots down, or you're adventurous? You know what I mean? Which one of those do you think that it is you just don't want to stay in one place, or are you just truly adventurous? You just want to see the most you can in this life?
Oh, I don't think that they are mutually exclusive, but my father has told me that I have a sampler's lifestyle. I never commit to something. I just bounce around. Same goes with my decisions with ice cream and men. And so
you heard that, boyfriend? You're on notice.
Yeah.
He's got sound blocked headphones in right now, so we're fine.
By design, I think.
He's no side quarantine boyfriends for the time being.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I definitely think that I started traveling when I was 19, and it was the best thing for me to do because you have the energy to sleep on buses and hitchhike and couch surf and volunteer in different places and be really uncomfortable for a long time. And for me, it was kind of this endless searching to see who I am and what I was. And I think that travel is so imperative to answer. It's a really good vessel to help answer those questions because you're sucked out of your home life. All that you knew about the world is gone. And you really have to look at yourself and see what you like about yourself and what you don't and the areas that you need to work on, because when you're at home, it's so easy to just become complacent, and just wear in the grooves of a couch. And so part of me was I don't know what the fuck I'm doing, so I'm just gonna like throw pasta onto a wall and see what sticks, which is why I bounced around so much.
Mm-hmm.
But I really just did want to see like what resonated and what I want my life to look like. And then the other part is like, yeah, you have to be adventurous. You have to have this sense of like, I'm gonna go get it. Like, I want to go live this like really cool. I want to live this very alternative life for a while. But I don't know. I never really thought of it as like being adventurous. It was just like, this is what I want to do. But I think that I've always kind of, I've always been that person. Like, I do a lot of things that scare people. Like, I travel alone. I get on stage and tell my own stories. Like, I love being on stage and I love talking to other people on stage. And stage fright is like the number one fear. It's above spiders and snakes, other than death. So yeah, public. So I've never like, I don't know. I've always been very. Those are things to me. I'm sure that there's plenty of things that I'm like, I don't want to do that, and that sounds really scary to me. But travel has never felt very scary, and I think that's because like I really learned how to quickly humanize other people and also humanize myself to be like, you're not a stranger, you're just human, and I'm talking to you as a human. Right. And I know what your pain points are, and I know how to make you smile. Right. So we're good, and we're not going to fuck each other over. Because kind of going back to like the very beginning, like I have actually felt incredibly safe 98% of the time while I've been traveling because I learned how to really listen and communicate to other people. And I fiercely believe that the world is so much more protective than predatory. Maybe that's a woman thing. I can't fully, I'll never be able to speak from a man's perspective, but I know speaking to other travelers who have also gone solo, who have also gone for a really long time, everyone's like, the world is fucking great. Like these stories that we hear are so magnetized. And we live at this time now where we can just look at our phone and get 3 messages about like a tsunami in Japan, a hurricane in Puerto Rico, and some type of like disease in, Croatia. So it's like we can get all of this terrible news immediately and it'll make us feel like the world is really dangerous. Yeah. When it's really just human brains not being able to handle the amount of information that we're being given at a time.
On the flip side of that, and I have, Coach, do you have any more questions? Because I want to ask the final question here.
No, I'm good.
Okay, but on the flip side of that, I just wanted to add to that is because that we do have everything at the well, of course my CGI behind me here has blocked out my phone. You can't really see it, but we have the whole world. It feels like anyway. It feels like we have the whole world at the tip of our fingers. So it actually, I feel like sometimes it encourages people sometimes not to travel or not to do things, and they're bored. I feel like a lot of people are bored nowadays because they feel like they've seen everything before it's happened, even though the real life, the reality of it is so much better. We do have two comments, and then I have to read out. I have to ask you this last question. But a guy comes in and says, love the content, guest, and conversation. Great job. Thanks, Guy. We appreciate you. And Will Hayes come in and says, disease in the world. What is that question? Why is he asking about disease in the world? I'm so confused. Maybe he's wanting to know, like, have you like been out and about? Obviously, no. Have you seen disease? Like, I'm saying, have you traveled to other countries and seen disease in the world?
No.
No. Okay.
That's a random question.
Yeah, I was like, what disease in the world? And maybe they were referring to like Corona, but I'm like, well, she's probably not traveling if the coronavirus is happening. I mean, I have friends that Europe is pretty much shut down. So, did we lose Adrien?
Yeah, I think she did.
right as we're asking the question to wrap up. Goodness, if I didn't ask your questions, she would have still been here. And of course, we have her with the most confused look on her face. So,
she's like, what were you talking about?
Yeah, right. Well, we'll give her a second. Did she drop? Like, is she still here? No, she's still here on my screen, but she hasn't dropped yet. So we'll give her a second. But if not, then we're gonna have to wrap up the show. What were you saying, Coach?
I think that they got it from the question that he was asking. I think because when she was said when you go through your phone you see disease. That's why I think the question, when she was saying naming all those things, she said something about disease and he said disease in the world, I guess
Oh,
was saying.
thing is we see these posts about disease on different places. There is a damn disease in the world. Have me on the next cast, and I have nothing but smoke. Have me on the next cast. I have nothing but smoke. Will Hayes says he has nothing but smoke. Is he coming? Will, are you trying to fight? What's going on, Will?
What
Talk
is
to
he
us.
talking about?
Well, I don't
I'm
know. I'm kind of confused now. Will's like, come on the
talking
show.
about like
But I got
disease.
nothing but smoke. Yes, brother. Will's like, Will Hayes, yes, brother. 100. Okay. I guess he's going to bring the smoke. I don't know. So I guess we'll have to
I don't
talk
know
to
what
Will after
that
this.
means.
Will,
What's
go
the
ahead.
smoke? What on your scale equals smoke? Because there's like 20 different things.
He's like, thing
Give
is,
us
we
some.
see these posts about disease on different places, and there is a damn disease in the world. Is he saying like that? Is he saying, I don't know. I guess he thinks that we're saying there is no disease in the world, but I mean, not saying that there isn't. I'm just saying that dead ass. Yet, yes, not fight though. Not fight though. Okay, well, I'll tell you what. Message Bridging the Gaps page, and we'll set up something for you to come on and talk to us about whatever it
Oh,
is you
that's
were
the
talking
name
about.
of the. I remember seeing this. That's
Uh,
the name of their show.
oh, okay, I got you. Well, yeah,
All the smoke or something like that.
all this. Okay, I see you.
So,
Okay.
so he was saying his tagline basically. So
Oh,
he didn't understand. We probably didn't know who it was. We had to go research it. But yeah, we're down for any kind of guest. We need smoke. We need that energy. We need
right.
people in here. You know what I mean? Coming here with some good energy.
Yeah, unfortunately, Adrien is gone and we cannot get her back. But again, we want to thank everybody that stopped out and talked to us this evening. What did Will say? Nah, it's tough to comment real time. Yeah, it is.
It
As
is.
always, stay beautiful, take care of yourselves. We are out of here. And also, announcement: we'll be making a NFL draft stream here for Bridging the Gap right after this show. So pop in for that if you want to talk some football and whatnot. As always, see you later. Deuces.